Hey, what are you waiting for? That's right. What exactly is it that's keeping you from accomplishing what you need to do? Well, if we get down to the root of it, I suspect we'll find out that we are merely procrastinating. Woof, it's a chilly morning this morning. And procrastinating came up in yesterday's discussion on self-sabotage in episode 84. And after planning my day this morning, I realized that I am procrastinating on some things myself. Bear with us this morning, as it is a chilly morning and we've got some frost on the windshield. So during the travel down the long driveway, we are going to let the defroster blow full force on hot. And I figured that procrastination would be a great topic to get into this morning after the self-sabotage topic of yesterday. And this is episode number 85 of the All Around Growth podcast. This is a show where we talk about how and why we build the lives of our dreams. And my name is Rob Kaiser, and I am your host. Today is Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. And like I said, the show title today is Procrastination and Goals. So, why was I thinking procrastination? Well, when I began journaling this morning, I was thinking about how I was going to work on another project afterwards. How I was going to get into my focus work, as I like to call it. And it dawned on me that I still need to finish my past year review. And I thought, shit. All right, well, moreover, I still need to work on my budget for the month of February, as well as my savings goals for the year. And we are going on February, my friends. It's the end of January. And not to mention, on top of all of that, I still want to go through Dan Miller's goal worksheet, and I will get to that later. But there's a lot to cover today, so let's get down to business. I want to make sure I cover as much as I possibly can, because my show notes are long and they are also very comprehensive today. So let's get to it. What does procrastination actually mean? When I started thinking about it, I wanted to look up the etymology of the word, because when I get on a tear like this and I really get to thinking about something that I want to talk about and something that's on my mind, I like to think about and look at where the words come from. What do they mean? How did they get to the point where we use them in the modern day vernacular of this day and age? And from Wikipedia, procrastination is the action of delaying or postponing something. The word has origin from the Latin procrastinatus, which itself evolved from the prefix pro, meaning forward, and crastinus, meaning of tomorrow. It could be further stated as a habitual or intentional delay of starting or finishing a task, despite knowing it might have negative consequences. That last part is interesting because it is habitual or intentional, which means it has become a pattern of behavior. And if procrastination is simply a pattern of behavior, then we have the ability to change or repattern our life. So keep that in mind. So how does this tie into self-sabotage? Well, again, in the show notes, I've linked to the article from yesterday, or the podcast from yesterday. I did both, actually, but I linked to the article that I referenced in the podcast yesterday. And we read that, have you ever found yourself stalled or stuck when faced with an important task? You're far from alone in this. You've prepared, done all your research, and sat down to get started, only to find you can't begin. Your motivation has completely disappeared. So you avoid the task by cleaning out the refrigerator, organizing your junk drawer, or starting a movie marathon. Procrastination can happen for no apparent reason, but it typically has an underlying cause, such as feeling overwhelmed by what you need to do, trouble managing time, doubting your ability and skills. And it's like they're describing writer's block. And also something that I've brought up before is the feeling of being overwhelmed oftentimes occurs when we are in the process of taking on so much that we forget that we already have a lot going on, and we forget to remove things from our to-do list because we're simply too busy adding all the things that we need to do. And these things that were outlined above, cleaning the fridge, organizing the junk drawer, these are things that might actually need to be done, but they're certainly not deep work. They're distracting tasks that keep us from focusing on what's important. So why do we do this? Why do we procrastinate? Why was I procrastinating this morning? Why have I not finished that past year review? Well, like many things, I made it far more complicated than is actually necessary and than is actually outlined by Tim Ferriss. And sorry, I got distracted. I'm driving into town again to the post office to mail a check to myself. 10% of my savings. First, I gave online. Second, I give to me. You got to give it away to keep it, friends. You got to give it away to keep it. What and how much of your paycheck are you saving? Anyways, back to this procrastination. I turned a simple exercise into something that has extended into a multi-day process, which I am still working on, all right? I've got probably, and will at the end of this, have at least 16 hours into that. Now, 16 hours is 9.5238% of a week. There's 168 hours in a week. You're spending 16 hours on something, you got about 10% of your week locked up in that thing. And that's what I've got locked up in this past year review. Why? Well, was the extension of the exercise itself procrastination? That time spent on that exercise could have been spent on goals. I don't know. It's something to think about, food for thought, but now that we're on goals, let's keep rolling and moving forward with talk on goals. Now, my history with goals dates back to childhood, I guess. I was involved in athletics and began weight training at a, relatively young age, as a teenager, and just in school in general. We are all relatively familiar with goals via the form of grades. And in my late 20s and early 30s, I was working in corporate America, and that was very goal-centric, and I kind of had a return to goals as well as learning and expanding upon them. And I had the stereotypical focus of my career and not on myself or my health, for that matter, and that led to burnout 1.0. And in my mid-30s, I began to grow away from that goal mindset because there was so much new information to absorb, and I was trying to change my life. Now, I had gotten into debt and actually declared bankruptcy in my early 20s. And then I was back in debt by my early 30s, And in the process of moving back to Ohio, I took on some projects and went back to the project work that actually led into the corporate world, because that traveling was kind of lucrative, and if you structured it the right way, you could make a fair amount of money doing so. And that's exactly what I did, which was my plan to get back to Ohio, moving across the country from Southern California via Texas, doing this project work. And the only issue at that time was I wasn't fully on board with Dave Ramsey. I was listening to a lot of podcasts, but I hadn't attended Financial Peace University yet. And I was really what would be considered Dave-ish. I was just on the cusp of completing baby step 2, but the medical emergency that I had in 2013, which left me in a coma, really set me back with several thousands of dollars in debt, and that was a bit of a challenge. Now, like I said, there was also so much to learn at that time, and in a nutshell, I fell into this lifestyle and mindset that got away from the goal mindset, because I was working on chasing other people's dreams. And when I started chasing other people's dreams and not being true to myself and leaving that goal mindset behind, I started accumulating debt. And ultimately, I reached burnout 2.0 in my life of 2016. And I made a decision to shift gears and focus on my career, because we were going through some pretty significant changes in the year 2016, really more 2017 and 2018, in the form of software changes and changes to our operations, and that continued into the 2019 season. And despite the challenges of last year, 2020, it was perhaps the smoothest season of my career to date. So 2021, now 2021 likely has some changes in store, and I know this for a fact, but there's also likely some other changes in store for 2021 as well with my personal life, and more on that later. So since the beginning of the use of the Best Self Journal in late 2018, I really began returning to this goal mindset. And that journal template has space where you can write down and expand upon 3 goals over the course of 13 weeks. Now, for the first 2 years, I journaled by the season: winter, spring, summer, fall. And in late summer, autumn of last year, I decided to change to quarterly journaling, because journaling by quarter makes more sense with business goals, and business is becoming a part of my life in terms of entrepreneurship and the desire to move forward with that. So returning to the goal mindset and returning to quarters of the year, because I think that's a sensible way to think and approach what I'm trying to accomplish at this point in my life. Now, if I want to move forward in life, I really need to hone in and focus on these goals. And I kind of feel like I've gotten a bit complacent in life with the ability to understand, or with, understanding that this major project at work is complete now, and it's integrated into daily operations as best it ever will be, and no further changes or improvements really will come to the program unless there is some monumental changes in personnel. So it's the best that it's ever going to get. I feel like that my career and my job have just become a paycheck, and I also feel like I've become simply a line item on a spreadsheet to my employer my managers, because I used to think of it as coworkers, the relationship dynamics with people there, but they're just my managers. My coworkers, or who I view as my coworkers, has changed. I think we all take each other for granted, and I think management and myself, we appear to be unhappy. So, understanding that, I now choose to focus on maintaining the best attitude that I can, and I'm going to continue to give 110% at the day job despite my feelings. Because, my feelings, I don't want to dismiss mine or anybody else's feelings, and it's good to think about them and understand them, reflect on them, but they sure as shit can't control your life. And we are becoming the most sensitive, desensitized people in this day and age. And I would encourage you to think about your feelings, but if you're uncomfortable with those feelings, once you've thought about said feelings for a while, try to shift gears and think about what the hell you're going to do about it, especially if you're uncomfortable, okay? So originally, going back to 2018, I had developed by that time, I had developed 7 different categories for my own goals or my own tasks or projects in the software that I was using called Nozbe, and it's a task project management software, Nozbe, and like November, Nozbe. It integrates well with Evernote. It's just a good program to use. Check it out. And those 7 categories were personal, Davis Tree Farm or career, side hustle, which was deliberate living systems, health, finances, York Meadow Farm, number 6, and number 7, the office or home, which at that time, my business office was under construction and there was a lot going on, and I had made that or dedicated an entire category to that at that time. Why 7? Not entirely sure. It seemed like the appropriate number. Anything less seemed like I needed more diversity. Anything more seemed like it was a little too much. And when I began using the Best Self Journal in 2018, I decided to dedicate the 3 goals in that journal to health, wealth, and purpose, in that order. And that comes from Gary Collins' 3-Legged Stool. And Gary Collins is the author of The Simple Life, and he's got a podcast and a number of books out. I would encourage you to check those out. He's got good stuff. Now, the new version of the Best Self Journal also has some benchmarks so that you can do some writing about where you are at in certain aspects of your life. And those benchmarks are health, finances, work, career, that's 1, relationships, personal growth, and mindfulness. Okay, so those are some good, diverse categories. And as I was rethinking how to approach or how to reapproach or how to approach my goals differently, I recently came across a tweet from Entre Leadership about the categories that Zig Ziglar uses when it comes to goal setting in his life. And those categories are spiritual, financial, physical. Sorry, let me start over. I think I swapped the I'm drawing a blank on the word, the manner in which I read these things. Anyways, number 1, spiritual. 2, family. 3, physical. 4, financial. 5, career. 6, social. 7, intellectual. Now, those categories are interesting, and shortly thereafter, I certainly made a note of them on a manila folder that I've got all of my goal work which is much of it is printed and has given me the opportunity to write with a pen and paper, which I think is good practice. I'm just dropping that letter off in the mail. It's become a new part of my routine, which I very much like. And anyways, back to the goals. Shortly after I read that tweet about Dan Miller, or Zig Ziglar rather, from EntreLeadership about the categories used for goals, I found myself in a position where I had purchased something from Dan Miller called the Find Your Focus bundle, which was marketed around Christmas as a 50% off promotion, and I decided to purchase it because $24 seemed like a reasonable price to pay for some good, thought-provoking work. Now, that also gave me a 60-day free trial into the 48 Days community, and I will touch on that more later. But the 7 categories for Dan Miller's goals and the way that he's got them outlined are financial, physical, personal development, family, spiritual, social, and career. And at this time, the way that I am working on my goals is via the outline by Dan Miller. And I am following them in that order also. And while goals have always been a part of my life, sometimes it's easy to forget about them. And sometimes, sometimes we can just get in a rut. And sometimes life throws us a curveball, and that's okay. There's an old saying, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. If life throws you that curveball, just keep moving. You can do it. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Remember, you can do it, and we already are. If you're feeling down about the status of your own goals, then this is the time to get to work. And not coincidentally, it's also the end of the show. So hopefully this episode has been helpful and has been a valuable use of your time as well. And if it has been, and you'd like to support the show, the best way that you can do so in terms of supporting the show is just going to the show notes and scrolling all the way to the bottom of them, because today they are quite lengthy, and clicking the link in all caps that says click here to rate and review the podcast. That'll take you to Apple Podcasts, where you can leave a 5-star rating real quickly. And if you feel so inclined, you can also leave a written review, which is very helpful. If you have any questions or feedback for me, feel free to send those questions to allaroundgrowth@gmail.com. And last but not least, the best way that you can support the show is get involved in the community over at Telegram. We've got a group there, Telegram Messenger. You can find us in your internet browser at t.me/allaroundgrowth, or if you've got the Telegram Messenger installed on your phone, tablet, or computer already, just search in the groups for All Around Growth and you will find us there. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you